Hi everyone! I hope you are all doing well. We're moving on to the importance of nature play, and in today's lecture, we're talking about nature for all. This week, you're going to listen and look at this lecture as well as watch the Where Do the Children Play video. A few reminders about the syllabus. You do have discussion post 5 due, as well as your child observation report. 10/22 are the due dates for those. You will need to make sure before you do your discussion post to listen to this lecture in its entirety, as well as watch the Where Do the Children Play video. And then for your child observation report, if you haven't already, please make sure to look at the assignment guidelines as well as the assignment guidelines walkthrough video that I posted. That should answer all of your questions related to that assignment. And without further ado, let's get into Nature for All. Okay, so we're going to start off with talking about today's world. We've already discussed a little bit about what our world looks like and how children use technology a lot, and we spend a lot of time online, and we looked a little bit about how COVID has affected children and humans in general, and how the amount of time we spend indoors is a lot larger than before there were electronics and TVs and things like that. And on average, 90% of a person's day is actually spent indoors, which is a crazy amount. And I can only imagine the time of day that we spent indoors during COVID and using technology and how much we didn't go outside. And on average, American children actually spend less than 30 minutes a day engaging in unstructured play outdoors, which is crazy because children should actually be spending about 2 to 3 times between 60 to 90 minutes a day each day. And so if children are only spending 30 minutes a day, they're only getting one time that they're spending outside, and it's not even a full 60 to 90 minutes, which is crazy. So I want you to kind of think about how much time you spend indoors versus outdoors, and what does that look like? What does a typical day look like for you? Do you work from home? Do you work in an office? Do you have a job where you're in a warehouse? Or do you have a job where you're working outside? So just kind of want you to reflect on your own time spent outdoors. And if you work with children or you're interested in working with children or you have children of your own, how much time do you think that you spend with children in your work or your personal life? Is it more than 30 minutes a day? Is it more than once a day? Just kind of some questions for you to think about. And honestly, the reason that children are not spending enough time outdoors is due to a couple different reasons. The big one that we just were discussing is the rise of technology. And honestly, when we spend time outdoors, so much research has shown that nature and time spent outdoors reduces sedentary behaviors and screen time overall. And a big one here is that children are spending limited amounts of time outdoors due to parental influences and attitudes towards nature. And sadly, when parents hold fears about the outdoor world, it causes their children to share similar fears with being outside. So we've seen that some studies show 50% of parents are fearful of stranger danger, so being around in the outdoors where somebody they don't know could cause them distress, and that fear that they're holding on can be shown in their children, and so children are then less likely to be outside due to their parents. Same with parents and their fears of children getting sick while spending time outdoors due to cold weather. So 20% of parents are afraid of their children getting sick when spending time outdoors. And it's interesting to see because although parents hold fears about the outdoor world, 87% of parents, which is more than half in the study that I am referencing, they actually agree that spending time playing outside is strongly important for children's development. But as we can see, children are only spending around 30 minutes or less engaging in unstructured play outdoors. And ideally, parents think that children should spend about 30 to 60 minutes when they actually need to be spending 60 to 90 minutes a day 2 to 3 times a day. So the majority of their day should be spent outside. Yet, our classrooms are indoors, our learning and education is happening indoors, and the only times children are really getting to go outside is for recess. And recess is not an alternative to true unstructured nature play. And we see that also access to green spaces and urbanization limits the amount of time that children spend outdoors. And just in general, humans, we don't spend as much time outdoors because we don't have as much access to it. And there's areas where we're limited and completely cut off from nature in its entirety. And 4 out of 5 Americans actually live in neighborhoods that limit contact with nature. So we see the rise of construction and buildings happening all around us where they're tearing down natural spaces and replacing them with big firms and housing. And so our nature's wonders are being cut off from us completely. And I want you to check out the video to see how creating nature spaces and more green spaces is important for children, and how their play is important in natural environments, and that nature exposure increases and benefits children's development. So check out the video that I have linked here. There'll be a couple more videos for you to watch along the way, and then we'll get into our next few points. Okay, so what happens when children don't spend time outdoors? A lot of things happen. When children are deprived of time spent outdoors, they're at a greater risk for nature deficit disorder. And let me tell you a little bit about nature deficit disorder. So, a man named Richard Louv wrote a book called The Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. And in his book, he discusses why children need nature and further explores the pressing issue that children are losing their bond with nature, and therefore a deficit is created. And one key element that Richard Louv touches on is the importance of parents and their role in encouraging and providing more unstructured outdoor playtime for children. And really we see that this deficit has increased childhood obesity, and more than 20% of children are struggling with obesity and being overweight by the time they've reached their 6th birthday. And spending less time outdoors limits and cuts off children from movement and physical activity, and it increases sedentary behaviors and screen time. And so naturally children are struggling with obesity and being overweight, and they lack social skills. As we've seen with the ramifications of COVID, we cut ourselves off completely from the natural world and being exposed to human connection real time. And many children have lower language skills and increased anxiety, and their attention is lower, and more children are likely to be diagnosed with early attention deficit disorder and have increased mental health challenges. And so really what Richard Louv was trying to say is that we need children to get outside. Humans need to be in nature, and when we're not spending time in nature, we are losing our bond with nature, and we have greater risks for lower health and development. Although it sounds a little bit daunting and scary to think about how children might be at a risk for nature deficit disorder if they're not exposed to nature and spending time outdoors, that can change. And one of the big factors in this, as we just discussed earlier, is the influence of parental attitudes and adults in general, and just being able to support children in spending time playing outdoors. Children need opportunities to be stimulated in natural environments by parents and caregivers so that they can have endless opportunities for exploration and to really deepen their curiosity and their learning. And when we think about the love for nature, we can see that children have biophilia, which basically is just a genuine feeling of connection with nature. And biophobia would be the opposite of biophilia. So this is a fear of nature. And we see that many times children, parents, and just humans in general who don't spend enough time in nature, they have biophobia. They have fears of nature. They have fears of the outside world because of lack of exposure. And so what we really want is we want to see biophilia attitudes come forth as children have time to spend in nature and enjoy the beauty of the outside world. We want children to have positive emotional connections with natural environments. And really what natural environments are areas that include nature activities, natural settings such as vegetation, landforms, various surfaces, and different types of weather. So although parents have fears of their children getting sick while playing out in the cold weather, splashing around in the rain, feeling the snow, all of those different types of weather are important for children. And being around natural elements such as plants and water and different types of animals, this can all create positive connections and emotions for children. And spending more time outdoors within the natural elements can create genuine feelings of connection. I want you to think about relationships and how, in order to create strong, loving, caring relationships, you need time, you need patience, you need the willingness to be vulnerable and open yourself up to someone. That's the same with spending time in nature and having a love for nature. If we don't give it a chance, we're unable to build a genuine connection. And we are fearful. And it's interesting to see studies of children and their biophilia attitudes. And you'll see that in some studies, they ask children questions. And in this one particularly, I noted some different areas that they asked preschool children living in rural versus urban neighborhoods about how they felt with nature, by asking them if they like to play outside, if they like to listen to birds singing, if they like to play with sticks, leaves, and pine cones. And then the alternative would be, do they not like to? And you see that in studies, the more exposure that children have to natural environments, the less fear they have, and the more appreciation they hold for elements of nature. They have a desire to care and cater to the needs of the natural world. And so I want you to take a moment to listen to the video clip I have posted here. Now, it's a long video clip, so you only need to watch for a few minutes, but I want you to listen to the nature sounds and the birds singing in this video, and just take a moment to appreciate the beauty of nature and give yourself a moment to relax. And if you're able to, I would highly encourage you to try stepping outside while doing this to get even more of a realistic experience of what it might be outside, and just kind of note down, how do you feel when you're listening and watching? Okay, so let's talk about why nature is good for us. I've already told you about why we need to have a love and appreciation for nature, but there's some actual data to show why natural environments and elements of nature are good for us. For example, dirt. And I wrote here, a little dirt won't hurt, because truly, dirt is actually beneficial to our bodies and our health. And dirt contains microorganisms, and the microorganisms that are in dirt actually reduce risk for allergies and asthma. And children who grow up on farms are less likely to develop allergies and have stronger immune systems because they're around dirt more and they're playing in dirt more. So think about if you have a young child who puts everything in their mouths and they start to eat dirt, and just kind of have that notion in the back of your mind that a little dirt won't hurt. And the microorganisms that dirt contains also alleviate anxiety and stress. And even in trees, they produce an essential oil that has antimicrobial properties. And so it's so fascinating to see that really everything that we need to heal us and make our worries go away is right outside our doors. And something else that I wanted to share with you is the idea of forest bathing. And so there's a video here that kind of gives you an idea of what forest bathing or forest therapy is about. And so I would love for you to look at that and just see how this healing therapy practice helps to reduce risk for depression, blood pressure, and anxiety. And it's by spending time outside, and not just spending time outside, because we could be outside and go right back indoors. Or you could go on a quick walk, for example, around your block. I know I do. Take my dog for a quick walk and then come right back inside. But the idea behind the healing therapy practice of forest bathing, the Shinrin-yoku, is that you are immersing yourself in nature completely and letting your entire mind, body, and soul be open to connection, breathing in the air and sitting in between the trees and feeling the dirt between your toes and your fingers. So also think about letting children take their shoes off when they're outside. If they're splashing in that puddle, let them take their shoes off and feel that water. Let them wiggle their toes between the grass and the sand and the dirt and the mud. It's good for them. And being around nature and being in an environment where we're away from the technology and the urbanization, it allows our minds to feel calmness, joy. We're able to be more creative. And also, we're able to focus more. We're able to pay better attention. And when children are able to have increased concentration, it promotes higher academic learning. So the more natural environments we have in comparison to urban environments really are better for us. And so I have another video here that talks about attention restoration theory. And so go ahead and take a peek at that. It just talks about the importance of how nature really is the cure for mental health and being able to spend time outside. And so next time you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed or your mental health is decreasing, I'd like you to just try and practice healing through nature. Now, you don't have to go to the full extent of, spending hours and hours outside and forest bathing per se, but give yourself an opportunity to relieve the pressures of our structured and chaotic world where we expect so much, where we're constantly work, right? We talked about the difference between work and play, and allow yourself the opportunity to play in nature and give yourself time to relax and decompress. So just something to think about when the next time you have an opportunity to go outside. Could be an opportunity for therapeutic practices and healing. All right, so now that we have all the good stuff related to nature, let's talk about some outdoor spaces and what that looks like and why we want to create different types of play spaces for children. So ideally, we want children to have a mixture. We want children to have access to outdoor spaces called mixed zones. And this is a combination of natural zones and manufactured zones. And when children have access to high quality outdoor play spaces, it truly does allow them the opportunity to have free, unstructured play, as well as structured nature-based play. And we'll get into what nature-based learning looks like in a bit. But just to give you an example of a natural zone and a manufactured zone, natural zones are open-ended materials. They are your full forest out in the woods, and a space where there's no manufactured or man-made areas. And this is where you have your plants, your trees, your wild spaces. And having natural zones, it really allows children to be able to have access to hands-on learning and further scientific exploration. And then we have manufactured zones, which are also both important. We want children to have, again, a mixture, a mixed zone, so a natural and manufactured zone. And our manufactured zones are our man-made structures. So this is your typical play structure: swings, climbing, playhouses, and we promote gross motor development and cooperative play through manufactured zones. And ideally, when I think of a mixed zone, I think of a park. I think of a park that has both plants and trees for children to climb in and explore, and grass for them to run around on, as well as swings and climbing structures. And we also really want our schools ideally to be mixed zones. And I want you to think about schools in the area that you live in. Are they more natural? Are they more manufactured? Is there a blend or mix between the two? And what does that look like? How are children able to learn in their outdoor spaces? Do they have outdoor spaces that are truly reflective of an outdoor classroom, where they're able to have a dramatic play kitchen and they're able to climb on the top of the play structure and use the swings and then play games with their friends? Or are these spaces limited to what children are able to do in their creative thinking and their motor development? So just something to keep in mind if you work at a school, you have children of your own, you're interested in getting to know different outdoor spaces and what elements are important to have in both of them. On the last slide, I said in both of them, but I meant to say it's important to have outdoor spaces that have both of them, so those natural zones and the manufactured zones. But getting into our next point, so in extension to having outdoor spaces that have natural zones for children, we want children to have nature-based learning. So it's one thing to say, okay, well, my child is at the park and there's trees for them and there's dirt and mud for them. Or they go to a school where there's grass that they can run around on and a tree that they could sit under and get shade from. But what we really want is children to have nature-based learning. And nature-based learning is the way that children are guided through their learning. So this is where the adult role comes into play. And we think about parents and caregivers as a gateway for children's exposure to the natural world. Remember, it comes down to, are we willing and able to take our children outside? Are we creating spaces for them to go and play and have unstructured time in nature? Do we live in areas that allow us to walk to the park or have a backyard? Or do we live in high-rise apartments where we're limited and we'd have to go drive somewhere? So just things to think about in how, as an adult, we're the gateway for children's exposure to the natural world. And another point with that, as the adult role, is that we can become a leader in our child's time spent outdoors by providing children with natural materials that they can have more opportunities to explore with. So even if we live in urbanized areas, we can still provide children with natural materials. We can bring nature indoors. Ideally, we want to bring everything that's indoors outdoors, but sometimes we don't always have access to that. And so we can think about how natural materials are a great way for us to encourage scientific thinking on how a person learns and understands using elements of nature. So children could count rocks and sticks. They could build a house out of mud. Spending time playing with natural materials creates opportunities for mathematics and science. It promotes children's language acquisition. Look at the picture that we have here. We got two very different pictures going on, and the scenes are set in different areas, but still both outside. So our top picture, we have three children, and they're playing with different natural materials. They have pine cones, they have different logs, they have some seashells, they have sticks and rocks. One of the children has a crown made out of leaves. And so there's many different things that they might be doing here. And really, it's up to our imagination and interpretation of what they could potentially be doing. They could be counting all their different elements. Maybe they're categorizing them and grouping them by type, shape, and size. Maybe they're building houses and pretending imaginary play. Maybe they've made their own kitchen and they're serving food here. So the imagination and creative thinking really becomes endless because children can freely choose what activities they want to engage in and how they want to play when they have natural materials. Natural materials are open-ended materials, and another way to coin the term is loose parts. Loose parts are open-ended materials that allow children endless opportunities to play in a variety of different ways. And there's no right or wrong way to play. And that's the beauty of natural materials, is there's no fixed idea of what you have to do and how you have to do it. It really is, what do you want to do? How do you want to play with these materials? Now, of course, adults can come in and they can prompt and they can say, I'd love to have some tea or whatever you're serving here in the kitchen area, or encourage children to try out different ideas if they seem stumped. But really, children can engage in both object and pretend play with limitless possibilities. They can engage in games with rules and games of fantasy. And the beauty of spending time outdoors is that there's gender equity. There are no gender roles, and nature is not gender coded. So children can play with whom they want, whenever they want, and being outdoors reduces gender norms and stereotypes. And we see here the bottom picture, we have an adult and a child, and they're observing, they're analyzing, they're looking at an insect on the ground. I had to zoom in even more. I think it might be some sort of cricket or grasshopper, but they can make inquiries and they can discover, they can talk about how small it is and where it might live, where the habitat this creature came from, and learning about the different elements of the world. And then later on, maybe coming back to this space or looking up information or finding other areas that have different types of insects that might spark the child's interest. So there's, again, endless opportunities when we're thinking about playing in nature with nature-based learning as the forefront. Now, not only do we want children to have endless opportunities to create their own fantasies and games and use their imagination, but we want children to have opportunities for risky play. And risky play is a type of play where children may encounter great heights, high speeds, dangerous tools and elements. They can engage in rough and tumble play, play that has high impacts. They might fall, they might get bruised or cut, and they're exposed to various weather conditions. And it's unfortunate to see, but 30% of children are actually lacking gross motor opportunities due to their limited amounts of time that they're able to engage in risky play, manipulative, and stability movements. So this, for example, looks like catching, dribbling, pivoting, and the use of inverted supports, so balance beams or ramps. And it's interesting to see that rough and tumble play between children and fathers has actually been shown to increase children's social and emotional regulation. So what happens if we're able to get kids outside with their parents and do some risky play? They're going to have better social and emotional regulation. We watched that video a few weeks ago about rough and tumble play, and we saw the scene was set inside the classroom, and they were going over the rules and how we needed to pay attention to our peers and establish rules and understand that if someone said stop, what that looks like and how we support them. So what happens if we continue to let children engage in rough and tumble play outdoors? And we can help them to build social skills and connections, engage in cooperative play with peers where gender roles are not assigned. How we can help children to regulate their emotions by allowing them to engage in risky play, giving them the opportunity to play with potentially dangerous tools and elements. And so I want you to take a peek at the video I have linked here, and you'll see that elementary school children in a forest school are talking about their outdoor games and their Jedi training through the use of play with giant sticks made out of large pieces of branches. And you'll see that they talk about the meticulous creation and development it took to make these Jedi lightsabers or sabers, however they each describe them, and pay attention to the amount of detail that they discuss related to safety rules, all while having fun. And so when you go to click, it's a web page. And so I want you to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And on the right hand corner, you'll see a video of a child in the right hand corner, and they're talking about their Jedi training. There's another video linked on there too, but the one that I want you to look at is on the bottom right hand corner. So take a peek at that and you'll be able to see the beauty of being able to engage in risky play where children are encountering high speeds, high impacts, the potential to get bruised or cut. They're using dangerous tools, but they're talking about the safety and the importance of their rules behind their play. And it's fascinating to see, and I wish we had more schools like this where children were able to use the elements of nature in risky ways. Okay, so this is where we're going to end, and this is my last slide for you today. And just thinking about risks versus hazards and your role again. A lot of what we're talking about in today's lecture is the importance of nature, but also your role in creating nature opportunities and outdoor play for children. And so you can think about your role as an adult or your style of parenting or teaching and how this impacts your ability to create risky play. And I want you to think about yourself as a hummingbird. You're gently watching over children while they play outside, and yes, they may fall, but it's okay to get hurt and fall down. They can get up and try again, and they may be scared in the moment, but you can coach them through it. And instead of saying, oh, be careful, we can say, oh, there's a step right above you. I would recommend lifting up your right knee, and then you can grab on with both of your arms and pull your body up. So giving them specific guidance that they can use while they're engaging in risky play. And really it comes down to what risky play does for children. It supports their sense of pride, their self-confidence, their resilience, their physical development, and their social-emotional development. And I have one last video for you to end our lecture today. And this one here, it shows a great comparison between the risks and hazards that children may endure and the importance of allowing children to take risks. And so that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's lecture on Nature for All. I love discussing nature, and I'm always happy to share my insight and research that I've done personally on the benefits of nature. And so if you're ever interested in more, please let me know. This is one of my niches. And then please make sure to watch the Where Do the Children Play video as well in conjunction to our lecture. And I hope you have a wonderful evening or day whenever you're listening to this, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.